I know teachers have told me you don't ever like smile and laugh, which I don't know how they manage. I like to laugh and I like to smile, and the kids know too when you're not happy with them. That smile goes off your face quickly. But no, but that year taught me that, you know what? They're giving you their best. And even the child that I had, I think 2 students that year that failed the ELA, which is the English, and I couldn't believe it because they were not ESL students or English language learners. And so now that kind of put me on this path of saying, well, what is it? What didn't I do as an educator that the English speakers did not pass the state exam? It was only 2, but I took it personal.
Correct.
And I remember going and saying, no, I got to figure out how to teach literacy. And so that was my mission, because teaching math to me, especially elementary math at that time, was very kind of sequential. I can tell any student, this is the type of problem. I can show you what your keywords are going to be, so you know what operation to use, what math, subtract or add or multiply. I can teach you, first you do this, second you do this, third you do this. That's sequential, right? And if a child can learn that, then they'll be fine for math.
Correct.
But the reading, and now the state tests have changed. So what you're finding now is there are more word problems for math. They want children to be able to use those reading comprehension skills and those math concepts and apply them in real world situations. So now it forces educators to say, well, they have to be good readers too. And so I decided, you know what, I literally sat down and said, okay, I'm going to use my experience, I'm going to use what I know. And I believe that if you can chunk literacy into those same type of sequential steps. First you do this, then you do this, then you will become a better reader. But literacy has to be taught in a very specific way. And so when I created my cultural literacy curriculum, I did just that. I broke it down for teachers. I do, which is teacher does, using the workshop model. We do, which is you practice with the students, whole group. And then you send them off to do independent work, whether that be in small groups or, it could be partner work, depending on their levels, or independent work. And I was able to chunk it. But, literacy also, I think as a whole, we have to do better. Children need to come into kindergarten already knowing their letters. They need to know their sounds, because believe it or not, you give kindergarten teachers give an assessment to kindergarten students the very first week of school. And that kind of sets the stage for what's to come. So you'll have some kindergartners who've been to preschool, and it was a really good preschool that taught them their letters, and not just their letters, but their sounds. They know their numbers. They might know how to count out of order. A lot of times we train them, A, B, C, D, but then they can't recognize Z versus N. So it's not enough to just teach them the alphabet song or to count. They need to be able to recognize numbers. And there's different ways that I think that parents can definitely train children before they even go to preschool. I'm talking about the 1 to 2-year-olds. I feel like as soon as children are able to move about, that's an opportunity. You buy them the different colorful blocks.
Correct.
And you show them. They might not be able to verbalize and say to you what they're doing, but if you show them the technique of grouping by shape, grouping by colors, you begin to train them about number concepts, right? If you begin to, put little cards up around your house and say that's fridge, and you write FRIDGE they will begin to recognize print and know that that's what that means. And that's part of learning. My mom used to tell me that when I was about 3 or 4, I used to pretend read, but you could not tell me that I could not read that book. Because what I would do is I would go to preschool, memorized whatever the teacher said, and came home and said, she said, I would open the book and I would go left to right, and you would think I was really reading. And she said I would take on these character voices, and I said, that's strange, because that's exactly what I do. I think when you're doing a read aloud with children, children need to be encouraged and see that you're into the story, whether or not you really care for that story. Teachers, we have to be mindful that we're putting on this show for children to get them engaged and get them motivated to learn. So if you're reading the read aloud like this and bored, boring, then they're gonna feel like there's nothing magical about reading. When they have to read science texts and articles and do the end of grade tests, it is boring. But if you've already instilled in them this joy and love of reading, because reading is not gonna only entertain me, but reading is going to give me information that I need to be a wholesome person that builds my character. And so one of the ways that I would even, as an educator, get children interested about social studies and reading about different communities is that I'll tell them, now you can go to this country and you'll feel like, oh, I know a little bit about this country. The whole purpose of science and social studies is just to make you well-rounded, that you are able to know a little bit about everything, right? And so you can have a conversation with someone, or you can listen in on a conversation in a room and not feel like, well, why don't I know that? But we have to tell kids these things, because then they feel like, well, why do I need to learn it? You have to be honest with them. This is why you need to learn it. And I try to live up to what I teach them. This past year, I was teaching a cultural arts class, where I taught students kindergarten all the way to 5th grade about different cultures. So we started in Africa, where people originated, and then we branched out into showing the connection between African Americans and Africa, and then we branched into the Caribbean and Central and South America for my Latin American students, and then we went over to Asia, to China, to Japan, and we talked a little bit about Asian culture, and we even got to talk a little bit about Native American cultures, like the Cherokee from here in North Carolina, because it was important to me that even though I only saw these children once a week, right? It was more like a specials class for an hour, that when they left me, they were edified. They could never say they weren't exposed to certain things. I gave you the knowledge. Now that knowledge still needs to be reinforced on a daily basis by their classroom teachers, right? And we just have to do better in making sure that children are well versed in the world. I kept telling them, I was like, you know what? Miss Francis is going to Africa. Watch. So what did Miss Francis do? Went to Africa. So my summer was, filled with new experiences. I got the wonderful experience to go to Johannesburg and visit the South Africans there, and I got to travel to a couple of their cities. And I must say, Johannesburg reminded me of New York City. There were high rises. There was no difference. I did a book fair there for several days, and I was just shocked that I looked around and I saw trains, and I saw just buildings, and it just reminded me so much of different pockets of New York City. And I said, you know what, if you had just landed me here and I had no idea where I was, I would say, wait, I think I'm in Harlem. Then we drove to another part, and I'd say, you know what, I think I'm downtown near Wall Street. Like, what's going on? But that was mind blowing for me and eye-opening, because it showed me that, the pictures that we usually see of Africa is usually, people in the bush, and that's not true. And we need to be more mindful of when we talk about our I don't want to say ancestors, but our cousins on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, that there's so many of them who are doing well for themselves. There's so many entrepreneurs, and there's so many different, there's I think 54 African countries. And most of us probably have only heard of a few, right? Or that we can label on the map. But Africa is there for us to explore, and I encourage everyone to go. If you can put your money towards going to other places for vacation, you can definitely go and visit your motherland. But yeah.
South Africa. How long were you there? And I know you said what was the best thing that you brought back as far as
I mean,
seeing?
No one can take away my experiences. That to me, and hopefully I'll get to incorporate some of those experiences into my writing and maybe some other books of Honeydew, go visit South Africa, wherever. But no one can ever take away what you've been through, right? That's your truth. And so just the wealth of knowledge and the people, the beautiful people. South Africa, I think, has about 54 million people. So a lot of people that I met. I went into one of the villages, which was about 4 hours away outside of Johannesburg. And that village reminded me so much of the countryside in Antigua.
Correct.
And I said, this is crazy. Even the way they built the houses, they had these huge farms of lychee, mangoes, but they weren't in season, so I didn't get to try any. It was like, no, the wrong time of year. But just seeing that, even though we are so far apart in terms of distance, in terms of generations not being on the continent,
correct,
that we're still so similar. We might have different languages, but we're still so similar. What else did I bring back? I love jewelry. So actually, this was a gift, this necklace around my neck. One of my good friends, Charity, bought for me. She said, you know what? She was so good to me. She was my host, as well as my agent out there. She booked me. We did a book signing out there. So I just want to say thank you, Miss Charity, if you're listening. But yeah, so the jewelry, and what else? Just meeting different people. The school children really blew my mind. When I did the schools program, I was able to talk to about 200 school children, and they all sat in a room during the festival, and they were quiet. Over here we're so used to kids. You put them all in a room, everybody. But as soon as I entered and I started to talk, the kids were just silent, and their ears were perked. So I would have them repeat certain things, and they would say it in unison, and it sounded like a chorus. I've never experienced anything like that. So I was really, really excited.
We have coming to a close. If someone wanted to get in contact with you, how would they go about doing that?
Email me, Teacher Cray @gmail.com, or you can check out my website, CrayMahaliaFrancis.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, @Teacher Cray. Follow me.
And Teacher Cray has a TV show as well.
Oh, yes, I do.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching the show, and you be encouraged.
Thank you. Awesome.